The story of Darth Vader crashing a shuttle with the Emperor aboard because he was thinking about his past Jedi life starts right now. Hello there, Star Wars fans. Today I'm bringing you a part of the book Star Wars Lords of the Sith that directly ties into the life of Anakin Skywalker as we get an epic parallel. As Vader is attempting to safely land a damaged ship, he can't help but remember the time he did something exactly like this above Coruscant, that time with Palpatine on board as well. It's an interesting part of the story that gives us a look into the mind of Vader as he truly fights with his past. Before I begin reading the excerpt, please do leave a like, please subscribe, it helps so much if you just click that like button. Thank you. It's free, it's easy, helps out a lot. Alright, let's get into the story. For perspective, Vader is in a shuttle with the Emperor and they're crash landing basically from an exploded Star Destroyer. Vader has to focus on landing this ship without crashing it and killing them. So, let's get into that. Vader flying the ship right now. The ship began crashing and they saw Ryloth below. The ship smoking, burning, and it was coming in at too steep an angle. It would break up in the atmosphere if Vader was not careful. He focused not on the churning perspective through the viewport, but on the fixed point of the instrument panel. Calm, immersed in the Force, he tried to reactivate emergency power, but without success. He rarely had to call on the mechanical talent that he'd possessed since childhood, but it would serve him well now. He had only a short time before the ship hit the planet's atmosphere, and if it hit while spinning out of control, they'd burn up. He set about redirecting all latent battery power in the ship to the thrusters. He needed only a few moments of thrust to straighten the ship, then rudder control for the reentry. His fingers moved quickly over the instruments, and Ryloth began to grow larger with each passing moment. A memory stabbed him now, as sharp as a blade. He'd floated alone in an escape pod over Ryloth once, spinning high over its surface after crashing a cruiser into a droid control ship. Another name bobbed up and broke the surface of the sea of memory. Ahsoka. He pushed the errant reconciliation aside and focused on his task. In the moments he'd redirected enough power from backup batteries for at least a few seconds of thruster operation. Now he did not hesitate. He fell into the Force, looked out to the viewport, let himself feel the motion of the ship, and activated the thrusters. The ship's spin slowed and its angle flattened. Another quick burn stopped the spin altogether, and the shuttle was on a path that would at least allow for reentry. He still had at least a small amount of battery power left, and behind him now, the door to the cockpit slid open, and he sensed the presence of his master. "The ship is nearly powerless," Vader said. "I will get us down, though." "No doubt," his master said and sat in the co-pilot's seat. "We have been in situations like this before, you and I," Palpatine said. Vader said nothing, though in his mind, it turned to a battle over Coruscant shortly after he'd killed Darth Tyrannus. As always, his master seemed to fill all available space with his presence and push Vader against the wall with his own power, his own mental wall. "Over Coruscant," his master said, "and at other times." Vader glanced over, but his master's hooded eyes stared out through the nest of his wrinkled face and revealed nothing. Palpatine always knew what he was thinking. Ryloth filled the viewport as the ship descended. Seeing the mottled browns of its surface, the smears of green and tan dredged memories of other times up from the sludge of his distant past, names he rarely thought of anymore. Anakin, Mace, Plo Koon. The shuttle hit the atmosphere too sharply and skipped and bounced, the metal shrieking under the stress. He burned the thrusters for a fraction of a second, righted the angle of approach, and reduced the jarring bumps to mere vibrations. Flames from the friction of atmospheric entry. Fire surrounded them. Fire surrounded them everywhere. Fire. Mustafar. ObiWan. He used his ever-present anger to burn away the memories, but the charred husks of the past clung to the forefront of his consciousness. Padme, he thought. He rarely allowed himself to think of her name. And his rage now slipped his control. He squeezed the control stick so hard that it cracked. His breath came hard, fast, loud. He felt his master's eyes on him, always on him. The weight of them, the questions they carried. He knew his master could see into him, through him. And he said, "You are troubled, my friend." His voice calm, while the ship screamed through Ryloth's stratosphere. "No, master," Vader said, and he sank fully into the Force now, used the focus it gave him to exorcise the past from his mind. He focused on the now, on safely landing a shuttle that was almost entirely without power. His armor regulated his breathing, and instead of being overcome by his emotion, he began to harness it, and fell even more deeply into the Force. He channeled the remaining battery power to the in-atmo emergency rudder and used it to make their angle of approach shallower. He realized that there must have been ships falling out of the sky all across the planet, hundreds of them escape pods. The smear of brown and green and tan gained clarity as they fell. He could make out features of the terrain in the light of the setting sun. Gorges, ridges, canyons, dry riverbeds, all of them streaked past, the surface everywhere broken and cracked. A huge forest of trees rose from the parched ground ahead. It looked out of place, a lesion on the otherwise dead surface of Ryloth, but he knew the planet featured several large expanses of woods. The ship careened straight for it, held in gravity's unrelenting grip. The ground rose up at the ship, as if the craft had been shot out of a blaster. He was still at too steep of an angle, but the rudder controls barely responded even to his strength, and he managed to lower the in-atmo energy flaps, and they helped flatten out the approach. The browns and tans disappeared, and the forest filled the viewport entirely, under it, over it, like flying over an ocean of trees. "Prepare for impact," Vader said, but of course, his master had already strapped himself in. The shuttle skimmed the top of the tree line, and Vader tried to use the thin limbs at the crown of the forest's canopy as a makeshift brake. Limbs scraped the hull, some small, some large, and the ship lurched and bounced and slipped deeper into the canopy. They struck another tree, another, before the ship finally slammed into the ground and buried itself onto its side, a meter into the soft loam of the forest floor. Soil exploded through the hole in the viewport and filled the cockpit to half a meter. The sudden silence felt odd, a strange juxtaposition against the chaos of the preceding moments. Vader now released his grip on the stick, the screech of one of Ryloth's animals carried from somewhere out in the forest. The light of the setting sun filtered dimly through the forest's canopy, casting the ruined cockpit in deep shadow. And through his armored filters, Vader perceived the organic stink of the soil the ship had displaced in its landing, the vegetable smell of the forest. Vader checked the instruments, and everything was dead, no power of any kind. "Distress beacon is inoperable," he said, then released the straps on his seat and lowered himself to the bulkhead, which now served as the deck due to the ship laying on its side. His master released his own chair straps, flipped as he fell, and landed gracefully beside Vader on the bulkhead. "That landing was far beneath your capabilities," his master said. "I've seen you do better in much more demanding circumstances. I fear your mind was not on the task, Lord Vader." Vader considered his response for a moment, and when he spoke, he did not bother to lie. "I was thinking of something else for a moment." His master nodded. "I guessed as much, and I'm pleased that you told me the truth, though I think it's only a half-truth. In any event, your lapse has left 4 corpses in the rear compartment." Vader didn't ask how his master knew that 4 men had died. His master simply knew things, many things, most things, and that was explanation enough for him. Of course, his master did not actually care about the dead men. He only cared about Vader's failure and Vader's half-truth. "It won't happen again, Master," Vader said, bowing his head. "I should hope not," said his master, perhaps meaning the mediocre piloting, perhaps meaning something else. "You said you were thinking of something else," his master said, using the tone he sometimes used when setting a verbal trap. "What was it?" Vader left off the door and turned around. He stared into his master's wrinkled face, and this time offered no half-truth. The past, my old life. His master stared back at Vader, his dark eyes like deep holes, and exhaled softly. I see. It means nothing to me, Vader said, waving his gloved hand. Stray thoughts, nothing more. His master said. The past is a ghost that haunts us. Ghosts must be banished. Lingering on the past is weakness, Lord Vader. Yes, Master, Vader said. And after that, that's where we're going to end reading the story. Basically, after that, they find out they're stranded on Ryloth, and they're going to have to find their way off. So, we're going to continue covering this book. I'm really enjoying reading Lords of the Sith. Let me know if you've read it. Let me know what else well, I guess don't spoil the book for me. But yeah, we're going through, and this was something I wanted to cover. I think I'm about halfway through now. And yeah, don't know when this video is going to be releasing, because as of recording, it is 11:06 p.m. I got some other stuff to do. Man, I love making these videos. These lore videos, fan fictions, they are so much fun. I love what I'm doing with you guys. Please do subscribe. It helps a ton. Really keeps me going. Daily content. I'm trying to keep it up. I am. So, stick with me. I love doing this. It's so much fun. So, thanks everybody. Let me know what you thought of this video, and I'll see you in the next video.